I don't know if you saw the show last night or the full 2.5 hour live stream I did in the middle of the day. It was good, but it was plodding. I was going through slowly, learning along with you. I had not read the full thing before, so I was sort of going slow, and I was going in chronological order, just sort of page by page. What I want to do now, instead of doing a 2.5 hour version, I want to see if I can get it down to 15 minutes. Not just 15 minutes to summarize it, but my thoughts on the whole thing a couple days in. I think the first thing is what this bill is not about. It's not actually about child pornography. That's being banned by the criminal code for decades. It's not about revenge pornography, where you filmed a partner and now you're estranged and they're an ex and you upload it to the internet in vengeance. That happens these days. That's being criminalized for 10 years. Stephen Harper passed an amendment to the criminal code in 2014. 5 years in prison if you do that. This law is not about getting social media companies to put a block button to allow you to ban people who harass you. All of these things, child pornography, revenge porn, social media safety, that's already in effect. If you feel yourself saying, yeah, that's a good idea, we should ban that or we should regulate that, okay, good. We're doing that already. That is not what this law is about. That's a distraction, a misdirection, an illusion, a trick. When Trudeau rolled out family members who had child abuse issues, he was actually using them. He was re-abusing them by making them human shields, cannon fodder, to distract from his real goal. It's not just the child pornography. This bill talks about banning incitement of violence, banning incitement to terrorism. I think you probably know those are already against the law. We toughened up our anti-terrorism laws after 9/11, and inciting violence has been a crime even before Canada was born. Now, this is really about censorship. It's obvious. This bill creates not one, not two, but 3 new offices and agencies dedicated to censoring the internet, each one of which has their own office, their own staff, their own budget, their own CEO. Plus, in addition to those 3 new agencies, it beefs up the Canadian Human Rights Commission and the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. To show you how important the censorship is, the Justice Minister has a new title: Justice Minister, Attorney General, and Minister of State for Online Harms. As I said yesterday, there are hundreds of laws in Canada. The Criminal Code has hundreds of sections. The only one that is now part of the Justice Minister's new title is this censorship bill. Censorship is the heart of it. The most shocking detail is a new standalone hate crime offense, punishable by life in prison. I didn't know the Liberals believed in life in prison. They certainly don't believe in it for murderers or rapists or terrorists, but for hating the wrong people, life in prison. Something equally shocking to me is the pre-crime nature, where a judge can preemptively punish someone, arrest someone, put them under house arrest, if they fear they will, in the future, commit a hate crime. Put them in house arrest, put an ankle bracelet on them, make them undergo regular drug and urine tests, seize their lawful firearms, ban them from talking to any particular person, ban them from going to any particular place. And if they resist these, going straight to prison for not complying, all before they've done a thing. There's other shocking things, like a requirement that social media companies like Facebook or Twitter take down offensive posts within 24 hours or face huge fines, which means that they will have no time to investigate or to hear the other side or to properly look into it. They'll simply take everything down when someone complains. I think one of the most personal aspects of this is the renovation of Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act. You may know that that's the provision that I campaigned on repealing when Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister. Based on my own experience publishing the Danish cartoons of Mohammed, we lobbied the Canadian government, and Parliament passed a law repealing the hate speech section. Trudeau's putting it back in. And this time it's even worse. He rewards complainants with $20,000 payments. That is, if you complain against Rebel News, you can get up to $20,000 from us and cause us to have to pay $50,000 to the government. You could complain for every single article we post because we tweet and use other social media for all of our journalism. Literally every single news story could attract a complaint to the Human Rights Commission for hate because it's a moneymaker now. This will create and fund an army of professional internet complainers. I should say that hate speech to complain to the Human Rights Commission now specifically includes criticizing gender identity or gender expression. You might not even know what those words mean. They're so newfangled. Gender identity is when you look like a fella, but you just say, man, I feel like a woman. You can have a beard. You can have your twig and berries. But as long as you identify as a woman, you're a woman. And you can go into a change room or a bathroom or a rape shelter. Every one of those things has happened in Canada. You can go into a women's prison. Gender expression is when you shave your beard and put on makeup. But if you criticize either of these practices, you could be prosecuted for a hate crime under this bill. What's even more terrifying, and this is something new, this was not the case when I was prosecuted in human rights court, complainants can now keep their identity secret, even from the accused. So a complaint could come in about a broadcast we do here. Who complained? Was it a competitor? Was it someone we wrote a critical article about? Was it someone in the Liberal Party? Was it an ex-employee or a personal friend who turned sour? Those are all relevant facts when you're accused in a real court. So you can say, oh, I know this guy. He's just mad because of that. Or I know that guy. He's full of it because of this. You don't know who's coming at you now. The ability to look your accuser in the eye is removed in this bizarre law. I used to think my first reading of the bill, I thought this is a war on Elon Musk because he's taken over Twitter and made it for freedom of speech. It is, but it's also a war on every big tech company. I think Justin Trudeau looks at those companies and says, well, I want you to censor more for me. But really, he looks at them and he sees money. In fact, one of the most shocking parts of this bill is a proposal that 8% of a social media company's global revenues be a fine, an 8% fine of their entire world revenue. What? So, by the way, I Googled it yesterday, and I think Facebook had revenues of about $140 billion US last year. So 8%, you've got a $10 billion US amount that the government of Canada thinks they'll just take from Facebook. We'll see how that goes down. But of course, Trudeau thinks he can spend money better than anyone can spend their own money. There's something else that is terrifying. The power to get into the internal records and the computer files of any of these social media companies, not to do some police work, but to do advocacy and education. But I don't think it's, in the end, really about hunting Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. I think in the end, it's about hunting you. If you have written a Facebook post or a Twitter post 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even one that you've forgotten about, the law specifically says if there is an offensive publication online that's still online and you could delete it, you have the power to delete it, and you don't, you're liable for it. Literally everything and anything you have ever written online can be used against you. You can be prosecuted for it. A $20,000 punishment if a complaint comes at you, plus a $50,000 fine. To fight that would probably cost you $20,000 in legal costs. This is going to be rushed through Parliament, of course. Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau has just renewed their vows in their coalition. So what's the public reaction been? So far, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms have all said this is very troubling. But there's people who will profit by it. Bernie Farber is one such name. He was the chair of the so-called anti-hate network that gets millions of dollars from American sources as well as the Trudeau government. Farber is a misinformation expert. Here he is claiming that a pamphlet in Florida, an anti-Semitic pamphlet in Florida was actually being distributed in Canada. He used the exact photograph of when it was shot in Florida. The guy's a liar, but he makes money out of whipping up hate. So of course he loves this. He's going to get rich off this. I saw Stephen Camp, the former hate speech officer of the Edmonton Police Service, who now works for the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, paid for by taxpayers. So what I'm saying is all the race hucksters, the anti-hate hucksters who grift for a living off of this, they love it because they no longer have to apply for grants to get their money. They can just file complaints for cash. Let me quote to you from an access to information request that we did with the government about this Canadian anti-hate network and how they get funded to file complaints. Take a look at this. This is that group that Bernie Farber was associated with. This is the hunter-killer group that likes to smear conservatives. This is from their grant application to the government. We got this through an access to information request. Look at this. We continue to file professional and lawyer-reviewed criminal complaints that provide evidence of criminal activity by members and supporters of hate-promoting groups. However, since applying for the grant, we have been disappointed to find that engaging law enforcement in this way is not particularly fruitful. Now, while we still file those complaints, we put less of an emphasis there and pursue other legal avenues in cases of criminality too, e.g. lawyer-drafted complaints to social media platforms. I have no problem with the language in the agreement in regards to law enforcement as in version 1. However, if you have no objections, I have omitted references to law enforcement in Section 1 and Section 3. Anyway, I won't continue on, but you can see that this is a letter from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network to the Government of Canada saying, we need money and we will take your taxpayers' dollars and we will use this to file legal complaints and lawsuits against Trudeau's enemies. That's how they operated until now. But now they're going to be given the legal right to live off of us and off of you and anyone they complain against. I think it's going to be how they kill Rebel News, by the way. Every single news report we do will be hit with a complaint for up to $70,000 per incident, $20,000 to the complainant, $50,000 to the feds. It's sort of like what they're doing to Trump. Endless nuisance suits, just batter us repeatedly, distract us, waste our time and energy. So what are we going to do about it? Number one, spread the word to Canadians, make videos about it, write news stories, send out emails, raise the alarm globally, let the world know, especially our American friends who care about freedom of speech, what's going on in their next door neighbor. We have a petition so we can show the government how wrong it is. Stopthecensorship.ca. If we can get hundreds of thousands of names, show the government how serious this is. And I want to prepare for litigation now. What do I mean by that? This is not law yet. It was just introduced this week. Hasn't been voted on yet. Hasn't been gone through the Senate yet. Hasn't been proclaimed yet. The Human Rights Tribunal hasn't been staffed up yet. These 3 anti-hate censorship officers haven't been hired yet. It's probably going to take months, maybe even until 2025. So we do have some time. But you know the instant that the power switches are flicked on, I can't imagine Rebel News wouldn't be sued the very first day they're alive. Not for the life in prison stuff, but for the $70,000 battering ram every day, every day. That's how they're going to come for us. And the moment this law is live, we will go to court if we have standing, if we have to see the final version of the law. Are they coming for us? Are they complaining against us? Are they investigating us? The moment we can, I want to be ready. I want to do our legal research now. I want to prepare the litigation now. So the first time this law is used, we pull the trigger and we go after it. I want the facts to be solid and I want the lawyers to be great. I want the best arguments. I don't want the first test case to be with a crummy lawyer or a crummy fact pattern. We're starting now. Rebel News really has no choice here. We have no choice in the matter. Don't you agree with me that of every news agency, of every contrary voice in this country that would be targeted by this bill, Rebel News would be at the top of the list? But don't you also think that if anyone can fight back, it's going to be us? And by us, I mean we and you. Go to stopthecensorship.ca.